Have you ever wondered why some people can watch a sad commercial and immediately start tearing up, while others can sit through an emotional movie without shedding a single tear? Maybe you've been told, "You're too sensitive," or "You cry over everything." But what if crying easily isn't weakness at all? What if psychology says there's something much deeper happening inside your brain? Today we're exploring the real reasons some people cry more easily than others. And by the end of this video, you may see tears in a completely different way. Let's begin. 1. Some people feel emotions more intensely. One of the biggest reasons certain people cry easily is because they genuinely experience emotions more strongly. Psychologists often refer to this as emotional sensitivity. Think of emotions like volume settings. For some people, the emotional volume is set at level 5. For others, it's set at level 10. The same event can trigger completely different emotional reactions. A touching story, a meaningful conversation, a heartfelt compliment, even a beautiful song. What barely affects one person can deeply move another. This isn't acting. This isn't attention-seeking. Their emotional system simply responds more intensely. And research suggests that emotional sensitivity is partly influenced by genetics. In other words, some people are naturally wired to feel more. 2. Tears are the brain's pressure release valve. Most people think crying is only about sadness. But psychology shows that's not true. People cry when they're happy, angry, overwhelmed, relieved, grateful, or even inspired. Why? Because tears help regulate intense emotional states. Imagine a pressure cooker. As pressure builds, steam needs somewhere to go. Your emotional system works similarly. Crying often acts as a release mechanism after a good cry. Many people report feeling calmer, lighter, more relaxed. That's because emotional expression helps the nervous system reset. So if someone cries easily, their brain may simply be using one of its natural tools to process emotions. 3. Highly empathetic people cry more often. Have you ever cried during a movie? Even though the events weren't happening to you, that's empathy. Empathy allows us to emotionally connect with other people's experiences. Some individuals possess unusually high levels of empathy. When they see someone suffering, their brain partially mirrors that emotional experience. In a sense, they don't just understand the pain, they feel it. This is why highly empathetic people often cry during movies, news stories, personal conversations, animal rescue videos, even fictional events. Their emotional connection runs deeper, and tears become a natural response. 4. Childhood experiences shape emotional expression. The way you were raised can strongly influence how easily you cry today. Imagine 2 children. One grows up in an environment where emotions are accepted. They're encouraged to express sadness, talk about feelings, seek comfort. The second child grows up hearing things like, "Stop crying," "Toughen up," "Don't be weak." Over time, both children learn very different emotional habits. The first may continue expressing emotions openly. The second may learn to suppress them. Neither approach is necessarily permanent, but childhood often shapes how comfortable people become with tears. Sometimes people who cry easily aren't weaker. They're simply less conditioned to hide their emotions. 5. What stress makes tears easier to trigger. Here's something many people overlook. Sometimes you're not crying because of one specific event. You're crying because your emotional tank is already full. Think about a day when everything goes wrong. You're exhausted, overworked, anxious, frustrated. Then something tiny happens. Maybe you spill your coffee. Maybe someone says one critical comment. Suddenly, you're crying. Was the coffee really the problem? Not usually. The tears were often building. Long before that moment, stress lowers emotional tolerance. The brain becomes more reactive, and tears arrive faster. This is why people often cry more during difficult life periods, not because they're weak, because they're carrying more emotional weight. 6. Hormones play a bigger role than most people realize. Psychology and biology are closely connected. Hormonal changes can significantly affect emotional responses. Fluctuations in hormones can influence mood, stress levels, and emotional sensitivity. This is one reason emotional reactions may vary over time. Someone who rarely cries might suddenly become more emotional during certain life stages. And someone who usually cries often might notice periods where emotions feel easier to manage. The important thing to remember is this: human emotions aren't controlled by willpower alone. Biology contributes too. And that's completely normal. 7. Crying can be a sign of emotional intelligence. Many people assume emotionally intelligent individuals cry less, but psychology often suggests the opposite. Emotionally intelligent people tend to recognize emotions rather than avoid them. They understand what they're feeling, they acknowledge it, and they allow themselves to experience it. Suppressing emotions requires energy. Accepting emotions requires awareness. That's a major difference. In many cases, people who cry easily aren't losing control. They're actually allowing themselves to process emotions honestly, and that level of self-awareness can be surprisingly healthy. 8. Some people have highly sensitive nervous systems. Psychologists sometimes talk about highly sensitive people. These individuals process information more deeply. They notice subtle details, small emotional changes, shifts in tone, facial expressions, social dynamics. Because their brains absorb more information, they often experience stronger emotional reactions. Imagine two people standing in the same room. One notices only the obvious events. The other notices every expression, every emotional cue, every subtle change. That extra information creates stronger emotional experiences, which can make tears more likely. 9. Society often misunderstands crying for generations. Many cultures have treated crying as a weakness, especially for men. From a young age, people often hear phrases like, "Be strong," "Stop crying," "Toughen up." And over time, many begin to believe that showing emotion is something to be ashamed of. But psychology tells a very different story. Appearing strong and being emotionally healthy are not always the same thing. In fact, some of the strongest people are those who allow themselves to feel emotions instead of constantly hiding them. Think about it. If someone breaks their arm, nobody expects them to pretend they're fine. But when someone feels emotional pain, society often encourages them to hide it, to smile, to stay silent, to act unaffected. The problem is, suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It simply pushes them below the surface, and emotions that are ignored don't vanish. They often return in other ways, sometimes as chronic stress, sometimes as anxiety, sometimes as irritability, and sometimes as emotional exhaustion that seems to come from nowhere. Psychologists increasingly recognize that emotional expression serves an important purpose. It's one of the ways the mind processes difficult experiences. Crying can help release emotional tension. It can communicate pain when words fail. And it can even create stronger connections between people. Yet many individuals spend years fighting their tears because they've been taught that crying means weakness. But what if the opposite is true? What if acknowledging your emotions requires more courage than hiding them? The reality is, tears are not evidence that you're fragile. They're evidence that you're human. Everyone experiences sadness, loss, stress, and disappointment. Some people express those feelings through tears. Others don't. Neither reaction is automatically better or worse. Crying is simply one form of emotional expression. Not a flaw, not a failure, and certainly not a character weakness. 10. Tears can strengthen human connection. Think about the moments when you felt closest to someone. Often those moments involve vulnerability, not perfection. When people cry, they reveal something real, something human, something authentic. Research suggests that emotional openness can increase feelings of trust and connection Of course, not every situation is appropriate for emotional vulnerability. But in healthy relationships, tears often communicate what words cannot. They signal honesty, pain, relief, love, gratitude, and shared humanity. So why do some people cry easily? Because they may feel emotions more intensely, because they're highly empathetic, because of their upbringing, because of stress, because of biology, because of emotional intelligence, or simply because their nervous system processes the world differently. The truth is, tears are not proof of weakness, they're proof that you're human. And while the world sometimes teaches us to hide emotions, psychology reminds us that emotions exist for a reason. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal is understanding what those feelings are trying to tell you. Now I'm curious, do you cry easily? Or do you rarely cry at all? Let us know in the comments below. And if you learned something new today, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more psychology insights. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.